Hello everyone, this is Tony with Intake Support, and this is going to be a quick tutorial video on using the Tasker application with the Junior. In this tutorial, we're going to be going over installing Tasker, accessing the Tasker configuration web page, and then going through each tab that Tasker offers for creating tasks. If this is your first time using a Junior, or if you're unfamiliar with the Junior support tool, I suggest you watch our introduction video for first-time setups, as it goes over installing the Junior support tool there. Let's get started. To begin, we are going to open a web page. We are going to navigate to Intake's website, junior.com. We are going to go to the Applications tab, and under Add-on Applications, we are going to go to Tasker. So this is the Tasker overview page in the Tasker knowledge base. And as you can see, we have our download here, Tasker. This is the Tasker update project, and that's what we're going to use to install Tasker on our Junior. So I'm going to click this. It's going to begin downloading, and as you can see, it finished. So now that we have this downloaded, we are going to open the Junior support tool and install this update project. So now I'm going to navigate to the Junior support tool, and as you can see, we have one unit on our network. That's the unit that we're going to be installing Tasker on. So I'm going to hit Update tab, and I'm going to click Open Project. I'm going to navigate to my downloads because that's where the Tasker update project was downloaded from the website. And I'm going to hit Open. And once it opens, you can see that it lists out a couple of steps that it's going to take to install Tasker on the unit. It's going to load Tasker. It's going to set it to run on boot. It's going to load the Tasker web page. It's going to create a folder on the Junior. It's going to load a Grapher application, which we're not going to get into in this video. That's a part of the Tasker update project. And then it's going to reboot. I'm now going to hit Publish. You can see that we have our unit that we want to update to. I'm going to hit the checkbox. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to double prompt you, and hitting yes, the update project is going to start. And like I said before, it's just going to load Tasker on the Junior. It's going to do a couple of other steps, and then it's going to reboot. So once this finishes, we're going to then open the Tasker configuration web page, and I'm going to just go through how that works. So now that the update project is finished, we're going to hit OK. We're going to minimize the Junior support tool, and now we're going to open up a web page to access the Tasker configuration and go over how to use that. So I'm going to navigate to this web page I already have open. I'm going to hit New tab, and then I'm going to type in 10.0.0.86 because that's the IP of the Junior on my network, and that's the one we installed Tasker on. And I'm going to hit /Tasker. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to load the Tasker web page for that unit. So here we are. We have no workspaces created. Workspaces are a configuration of tasks, and they can be set up to be executed in different ways, but we'll get into that. Let's just create a new one for now. So create new workspace, and as you can see, we have a couple of tabs available. We have tasks, devices, loggers, signals, triggers, and schedules. And we're going to go through these from left to right one at a time. So to begin, we have the Task tab. Tasks are just a collection of actions put together that execute from top to bottom. So if I click Add Task, it'll ask me what I want to name it. We'll just use the default name for now. And as you can see, we have the task. Here it is. And then we can add actions to it. And then we have this big dialog of actions that we can go through. They're sorted by what they do. And you can simply, just for this example, hit close relay. And as you can see, I've now added this action that when this task is run, it's going to close relay 1 on the Junior. That's the Task tab. There's a lot more to it, but just for a general explanation, that's what it's for. It's to create tasks. So now we're going to move on to the Devices tab. So this is the Devices tab, and this is where you can create device configurations so that they can be included in tasks so that they can send to the device itself. So for this example, I'm going to create a device and then show you how it can be included in tasks. So I'm going to hit Add Device. You can see it has a default name, and then there's a device type drop-down that lets you choose from different device types. Not all of them are implemented, but for this example, I'm just going to use the Ethernet device. And I'm just going to change the name to Ethernet space device. I said space and it shows an underscore. Spaces can't be included in the device name, so it converted it to an underscore, in case you're curious. So I hit OK, and you see I now have a device declared here with the name I chose, and we need to enter some additional information. I'll just give it some junk data, so 10.0.0.100, and then for the port I'll just say 5555. We're not actually going to send to a device. This is just for an example. So I have this device configuration I've created, and then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go back to my tasks, and we had this task created previously, and I'm going to hit Add Action. I'm going to go down to the bottom where it says Communication, and you can see here there's this action called Device Send. I'm going to click it, and there's some fields here, and one of them is this drop down for a device to send to. And as you can see, this Ethernet device we created in our device tab is now here to be included in a task to send to a device. So, and then if there was data we'd want to send it, we could say like test, and that would be the data that would get sent to the device we declared. So that's what devices can be used for. They can be implemented in tasks that get sent to devices. So now let's move on to the Loggers tab. So this is the Loggers tab, and basically kind of like the Devices tab, this allows you to create logger configurations so that when a logger gets called, it'll follow that configuration and create that log file that you specified. So for this, I'm going to create an example here where I add a logger and then I show you how you would reference it from a task. So we're going to hit Add Logger, and I'm just going to leave the name as default. As you can see, we get a couple of fields here for this logger. To start, there's the name of it, and you can see it actually by default has a path. So defining the name of the log that would get generated from this logger also defines where it would get saved as well on the Junior. So you can see the path would be a Flash folder, then Tasker folder, then a logging folder, and then if we wanted to give it a name, I could do test.log. So test.log would be the file that gets generated, and it would get saved to this path of Flash folder, Tasker folder, logging folder. That's where it would live. The next field is headers. Basically, when the log file gets created, if there's header values here at the top of the log file, they'll be listed there, and they don't get re-added. They just sit at the top of the log file. Helps with defining values to be sorted through column headers, maybe, as an example. And then next, we have a timestamp. The timestamp format just defines, so every time that the log file gets written to, what the timestamp format would look like for each line. The default here is what would be used unless you change it. So if you leave it as is, that's what gets used. And then lastly, there's a schema. This is the actual data that gets logged. As you can see, I've entered test before. So basically, anytime this logger gets called, if the log file doesn't exist yet, it gets generated and it would get saved here. And then it would just log the word test to it. So there's some extra values, but we won't go over those. We'll go over them in a separate video maybe that goes more in depth for the logger tab. So now that I have this logger created, I'm just going to real quick show you. When I go to a task, I can hit Add Action, and then if I go to File, you can see there's a log profile, and you can reference the logger name. So we just left it as a new logger1. I'm going to copy it and just go over here and paste it. So when this action gets executed in this task, it'll run that logger and generate that log file. So that's what loggers can do. They help you create log files and log data. So now we're going to move on to the Signals tab. So for the Signals tab, it's basically just a way to reference an I/O value from either the Junior or the expansion modules that can be connected to it. They can be referenced from multiple different tabs. They can be referenced from the Logger tab, the Triggers tab especially, and the Tasks tab. I said especially for the Triggers tab because you need to have signal values defined to set up triggers. We'll go into that in a second, but just as an example, I'm going to create a signal here so you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to hit Add Signal, just going to leave it as New Signal 1, and you can see we get a drop down, and all the references here are to I/O values on the Junior or I/O values that are from expansion modules. Just as an example, I'll just hit Relay Outputs, we'll set it to Channel 1, and the value would be the state. So this signal represents whatever state relay output 1 is on the Junior. So that's how to create a signal. Now we're going to move on to triggers. So this is the Triggers tab, and this just allows you to reference signals from the Signals tab to know when to execute a task. For example, previously we made a signal that references the state of relay output 1. We could use that here to create a trigger where it'll execute a task when that relay output goes high. So let's do that now. I'm just going to real quick hit Add Trigger. You can see that there is a name by default. We're going to leave that. And then there's a trigger type, and there's quite a few options here. We're just going to leave it as discrete signal because that's in reference to I/O values that just go high or low. So I'm going to click that and hit Add Trigger. And as you can see, we get a drop down here, and we reference a signal that we created to add to this trigger. So I'm going to click drop down, and you can see our new signal 1 here is what we can reference. You can also do any input or output, but for this example, I wanted to show using a signal we created. So I'm going to click that. In the state, we said high, so I'm going to add that here. And there you go. We have the trigger set up. All we need to do now is add our task. So tasks that are created can be added here. So now we have a full-on trigger that if this were to be set to run, when our relay output 1 on the Junior goes high, it would execute that task we created previously where it had a jumble of actions that would execute. So that's a quick explanation for how triggers work. Let's move on to schedules. So our last tab we're going over is the Schedules tab. It's similar to triggers as they also execute tasks, but rather than use signal values to execute, they use time. So for here, I'll just create a quick schedule that has some rules for when to execute the task that we add to it. And to start, I'm going to click Add Schedule. I'm going to just leave the default name, New Schedule 1. And you can see now we get to add rules to it, and then we get to add the task we'd want to execute. As you can see, we get the same option from before. But for the rules, it gives us this dialog where we can choose scheduling, or we can have some other options for when the Junior reboots and sunrise and sunset. This gets dependent on your latitude and longitude, and on boot you need no additional information. But specifically for the schedule, you can choose a date to set it to. It gives you a calendar to choose from. So let's say if I chose January, you can see all the days for that. It also lets you choose from a 24-hour format the time it would start, intervals of when it would repeat, so you could do it so that 1 minute or even seconds and hours. And then you can choose daily or weekly. Monthly is not implemented yet. Or you can just set it to none. But if you do have it set to daily, you can choose how many days it would reoccur. And for weekly, you can choose the days throughout the week that it would occur. So if I wanted to, I could just set this to daily, and we'll just say July 1st. And then if I hit add, it would have this rule now where it would repeat every minute starting at midnight until midnight. So a whole 24 hours, and that would start on, if I click this, edit, it would start in July. So that's how you can create a schedule to automate when a task would execute. That's all the tabs in a workspace. Hopefully this gave you an introduction to each tab and how they function and work with tasks. So if you have any questions or need any additional assistance, please reach out to us and we'll help you use the Tasker application. Thank you so much for watching.